Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this NAWIC, National Association of Women in Construction panel event to talk about the 2040 film and discuss it amongst the panel of incredible women that we've got joining us today. So my name is Georgia Elliot Smith. I'm a Sustainability Committee member on the NAWIC committee. Just to let you know, for those of you who are not NAWIC members, NAWIC is a membership organisation. It's as I said, the Association of Women in Construction. There are different chapters, and this is an event organised by the NAWIC London and South East chapter. We are always looking for new committee members, so if anybody has a little bit of time and inspiration and energy, then you're more than welcome to get in touch, and we'd be delighted to welcome you to the committee. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We've got three brilliant sustainability professionals with us tonight. They're all going to be available to answer questions, and we're going to have a conversation. So if anybody does have questions to ask, then please pop them either in the chat box or in the question and answer box, and we will do our best to answer those questions for you. So just a little bit of business to start off with. This webinar is going to be recorded, and that recording will be available on the NAWIC YouTube channel probably from next week. So keep an eye out for that, and those who are members will get emails to tell you when that's uploaded. Also to let you know that we will be continuing to host events online, so they will be at least monthly, sometimes fortnightly. Go to the NAWIC London and South East website and you'll be able to see the calendar of upcoming events, and then you can register for those. Most of those events are for free if you're a NAWIC member, and sometimes free like this screening if you're not. So we really do welcome new members, and if you enjoy this event, then please do go to the website and join up. So just to introduce myself a little bit more, as I say, my name's Georgia Elliot Smith. I am a sustainability consultant in the property and construction industry. My background is that I'm an environmental engineer, and then started out in construction, working for a major contractor, and then progressed into sustainability consultancy. And I'm now the managing director of Element 4, which is a sustainability consultancy based in London. I'm also a very proud environmental activist, and one of the members of the panel tonight knows me from that. So I am an activist with Extinction Rebellion, and also I'm currently a legal activist, which I didn't plan to be originally. So I'm currently engaged in a legal challenge against the UK government on carbon emissions, particularly in relation to waste incineration. So if you follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or Facebook, then you'll see my pinned posts give all the information about that, and I'm sure I won't be able to help myself from talking about it during this conversation. So I'd like to just very, very quickly introduce the panel tonight. First of all, we have Nidhi, who is the head of design and sustainability in design and construction at Bouygues. We've also got Kat Scott, who is an architect with DRMM and also a committee member with many organisations looking at climate change and architecture, and I'll let you tell everybody about that. And thirdly, we've got Carol Scott, who is the principal sustainability advocate at Tate Towers, which is an organisation in live events. So with that very, very quick intro, can I just pass on to you ladies to properly introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background and how you came into sustainability in the first place. So who would like to go first? Go on, somebody be brave.
Yeah, okay.
Go on, Nidhi.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Georgia. It's a pleasure to be here. I've not been involved in NAWIC events before, so this is my first one, and I'm happy to participate today. So my background is in architecture. I'm an architect, and I've been working in the construction industry since about 2004. So I did my bachelor's degree in India, after which I worked in India for 4 years with various different architecture firms. Now, when I did my architecture degree, we had, it's a bit different in India. We had a 5 years degree course just for the bachelor's degree, where the last 2 years we could select some modules which were different for different people. So I took up sustainability then, and since then it has stuck with whatever I did. So when I worked with various different architecture firms, I tried to push the agenda for sustainability. And then the context was in India. And this was in 2004 until 2008. So with the context of India in a developing world, it was quite difficult to push the agenda of sustainability when the clients were only focused on getting their buildings built with the budget that they had. So I decided to pursue a master's in architecture, but in sustainable design, where I knew that the clients who would come to me would come with the agenda of sustainability in their minds, so I wouldn't have to sell them the idea of sustainability. Having said that, since then until now, believe me, I have been selling the business case for sustainability in everything that I do. So it hasn't been a very successful idea since then, but I enjoy working on projects where I'm able to push the agenda of sustainability and tackle the effects of climate change through the design and also through construction. So I work for a construction company now. I've been working for Bouygues Construction in the UK for since 2013. And my role widely involves working on strategies for the company, for carbon, for climate change, but also for projects. So making it happen is what me and my team do within the company, trying to make sure that strategies when developed are not just on paper, but you can see them in reality. So that's just a brief introduction about me. I'll let the next panelist take over now.
Unmute, there we go. Thank you very much, Nidhi. That was really nice to hear. So Kat or Carol, who would like to go next?
Sure, I'm happy to go next. Again, this is my first NAWIC event, so I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I work at an architecture practice called DRMM, as you mentioned, based in London. And I work there as a senior architectural assistant, which means I'm not quite finished with the process of qualifying as an architect yet, partly because of coronavirus, but also as a result of spending the last 18 months or so increasingly dedicating my time to sustainability and trying to create change in the construction industry through work in different advocacy groups. That you mentioned. At DRMM, 2 days per week of my time is spent on sustainability strategy and implementation of that strategy in-house and research and so on. And that's been really exciting, and that's grown over the last year or so to become the 2 days per week role that I have there. And the rest of my time I spend working on architectural design projects. And I understand the very real struggle that Nidhi referred to in terms of the actual implementation of best practice in real project work, and the kind of challenge of working with clients who might not always be on board or have the funds to do certain things. But also outside of work, or in complement to my role at DRMM, I'm involved in 3 of the industry's climate advocacy groups. So I sit on the steering group for Architects Declare, and I have done for about a year now. I sit as part of the LETI, which is the London Energy Transformation Initiative voluntary group, who are working on embodied and whole life carbon. And I was part of the core team who instigated and wrote the embodied carbon primer that was released earlier this year. And since the release of that primer, we had a bit of a break, and we've kick-started in spring, summer this year, the next iteration of that primer. So I'm leading a work stream in that group looking at circular economy, and better incorporating circular economy best practice into that guidance document, and also moving forwards what else we think we need to achieve for LETI. And then finally, I'm also a coordinator at the Architects Climate Action Network, and I have been since about last summer. And there I lead a group called Where the Wild Things Aren't. And so that group is looking not at carbon or any of the kind of technological aspects, but more in terms of regenerative design, our impact on the construction industry's impact on broader ecologies, wildlife, water, all of the other stuff that we don't really talk enough about. So yeah, they're my hats that I wear. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here to talk about this film.
Thank you so much. I really sympathise with that, wearing lots of hats and also having a day job as well. It's kind of trying to get that done. Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks very much, Kat. And Carol.
Hi, I'm afraid some fireworks have just started going off, which is, I now have the dog on my knee because he's petrified. I'm going to try and keep him out of camera shot.
Oh, that's fine. The dog is welcome. What's the dog's name?
Sherlock. You want to say hello, Sherlock?
Oh, Sherlock. Oh, he's so lovely. Oh,
anyway. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Carol Scott. I am the principal advocate for sustainability at a company called Tate Towers. We're a global organisation, and we specialise in providing staging and automation to live events. So we have huge array of clients, anything through from Justin Timberlake and Kanye West and Madonna to Disney to the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, and we operate across the globe. And I was actually the vice president of sales up until about 2 years ago. And I was a climate activist, part of Extinction Rebellion, and really I changed all of my personal life as much as I possibly could. I got rid of the big car, and we had gone zero waste in our household, and I thought, well, really I'm at my personal limit, so where do I go next? And I thought, well, why don't I just make this a part of my career, because concert touring and theatre are really they're in the embryonic stages of adopting sustainability in their practices. So I asked if I could make a speech about sustainability at our global sales conference, and there honestly was like a bit of a yawn for Europe going on, and nobody was really very much interested. And I got up there and I gave such a passionate speech about why it would be absolutely horrific if we knew what we knew and we didn't do anything about it, and it would be pitiful for us as an organisation not to lead the charge in getting everybody on board in our industry to become more sustainable. And that really that we owed it as a legacy to our children to be an industry that humanity could be proud of. And I sat back down and there was stony silence, and I thought, oh my God, am I fired? And at the end, the owner of the company came and said to me, well, if this is what you feel, this is what you should do, and you should lead the charge. Just tell us how you go about doing it. So the company paid for me to do a course in sustainability leadership at Cambridge for people that are like at C-level or in the C-suite or directors. And then when I finished the course, we were just about to start launching ourselves into sustainability, and COVID hit. So we were in the entertainment industry, as you know, is on its knees right now. So we were in triage really to begin with. Now we are stable and we're looking to what the future is going to be for us as an industry. And what we've done is we've collectively taken this time that we don't normally have, because normally we live from show to show, nanosecond to nanosecond, and we're never collectively all not working at the same time. We never have a hiatus all at the same time. So what's happened during COVID is lots of groups have started springing up talking about diversity and inclusion and how we'd be better at that, and how we'll be better at sustainability. So what we've done at Tate is we've started linking all of the different organisations and groups of people that we talk to together and getting them all talking so that we can holistically look at the industry. And I've also taken a role with an organisation called the Sustainability and Production Alliance, where that is an open forum to everybody in the industry. It doesn't matter if you're a wig maker or if you are a college or if you're a promoter or a producer. It's an open forum for everybody to come and start talking about sustainability and how we introduce it into our standard working practices when we open back up post-COVID. And what's really been interesting is when we imagine what the world would be like if we could write a rule book and like on how to put a production on and look at it from a sustainability point of view. The thing that people talk about all the time is they just don't know where to start. So what we've been doing is we've been making a series of documents by discipline. So if you're a sound engineer or a lighting engineer or a promoter or a tour manager, here are the 10 easy wins that you can do. So if you're a sound guy, this is what you can do. If you're a lighting guy, this is what you can do. Just so that everybody can have, we don't expect everybody to do all 10 things when they first start back to work, but if they do one, it gets the ball rolling and it gets everybody talking about it. So I would say that we are using our time very, very wisely here now to work out how we can come back and build back better, because actually it's not the government that's going to build back better, it's people that are going to build back better. And we are just creating a movement. So watch this space. In years to come, we will be telling our audiences what the carbon footprints of our productions are and how we got there, and asking you to join the journey with us. So yeah, we have big plans.
I love that. I think that's so interesting, starting from a business that hasn't looked at it at all, and then having that completely clean slate, or not, mucky slate, of trying to implement something from the ground up. And I think what came out in what you were saying, and I also picked up from the other ladies, was about collaboration and about this idea that we can't do this on our own as professionals, as either sustainability professionals or people with a passion in this, that we really do need other people around us to come together for the solution. And I know, Kat, you and all the committees that you are on, it very much, I know we've talked about this before, haven't we? It's like you can't wait for the government and the regulations to catch up, because they're just taking too long. So I love what Letty and ACAN and the whole Declare movement is doing around saying, we're not going to wait to be told, we're going to grab this with our hands and we're going to see what we as professionals can do. I mean, how did you first get involved in that?
So I suppose I studied at school, at university, where I was taught that climate change is fact, and it was in my science textbooks for GCSEs and A-levels, and I kind of naively felt that the government would do something about it, and I naively kind of ignored it and enjoyed in my undergraduate studies, although I studied at a university that had a huge focus on the environmental design standpoint, I had a great education in that. My personal kind of interests in architecture were quite, I'd say, on the artistic side of the scale, and didn't necessarily take into account environmental impact in my studies. And then when I went back to do my master's, and I worked on a huge project then afterwards, which was Crossrail, so working on public infrastructure delivery, trying to improve obviously people's transport in London, but ostensibly quite a big carbon impact, I suppose, as far as projects go in the short term. But I think then it was on my return to my postgraduate studies at the Bartlett that I realised that really no one was really taking this seriously, and I wrote my master's thesis on the Anthropocene, and I did an awful lot of reading around kind of where we were sitting as a planet, how humanity had dismantled so much of the natural systems that we've kind of taken for granted and so on. So on being released from my studies, I had a new fire in my belly, and I luckily went to work at DRMM, where they've always advocated for timber architecture, timber construction. They've always had a passion for using natural materials, kind of low embodied carbon materials, although probably 10 years ago you wouldn't have called them that. And so I then at DRMM was really lucky to be there at a time where last year they announced that they were going to be one of the founding signatories of Architects Declare. And I had already signed up to be part of one of the Letty working groups at that point, and I'd already been attending embodied carbon and whole life carbon meetings because I was interested in making change in my role. And I guess a bit like what you were just saying, I suppose I wanted to see what impact I could have using my kind of professional agency that I have, which is that architects are hugely responsible for carbon emissions in the UK, if you think that 40% of carbon emissions arise from the built environment, and architects are hugely influential in what is designed and delivered in the built environment, I could see that there's big scope for us to make a big reduction of emissions and impacts and tread more lightly on the planet if we only designed buildings better. So I approached, not dissimilarly to what you just said, Carol, I approached one of our directors on signing Architects Declare's commitment points and said, do you know what you've signed up to? This is quite hard, actually, particularly the aspects relating to whole life carbon and embodied carbon. And they said, great, I'm so glad you came to talk to me about this, because we haven't got a clue how to do this.
So they had signed it before they knew. I think that's the same for so many people, that they go, great, we'll set a net zero target. Yeah. Oh God, how are we going to do it?
Yeah, well, it was so the 17 Sterling Prize kind of practices at the time came together to rally around it and give it support, but it was a bit of an unknown territory for the industry at that point in terms of what it would mean, I suppose. So then I was given the opportunity to develop a strategy for DRMM to implement that initiative, and so I went away and produced a presentation. And then organically afterwards, one of my colleagues was involved in ACAN with some friends, and they were starting this initiative and asked me if I could come along to share my knowledge from Letty, and so on and so on. And I think at the Architects Declare conference this time last year, I was particularly gobby and was invited to join the steering group to help implement some of the ideas that I was suggesting that day. So I think it's all been quite organic and kind of spiraled into such a pace that I wouldn't have imagined 2 years ago that I would be part of 3 advocacy groups. But yeah, it's all fun, and I think, as you say, it's all about collaboration. Like Letty is not just architects but engineers, you know, clients, developers, construction companies. So I think that's really vital part of this solution.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, I love what you say about being gobby. I think, you know, I love women who are just like standing up and saying, no, this is not good enough. Actually, we need to do something about it. And I think it has been amazing to see so many women standing up and really taking a lead in sustainability. I think it's been completely brilliant, and very disappointing that the UK government delegation to COP26 is all male. So, you know, I'm working with some women in sustainability to try and sort that out and challenge that. But yeah, I mean, Nidhi, I'm really interested to hear about your experiences in construction, because I sympathise. You know, I have worked a lot of my career in major contractors, and I arrived on site kind of ponytail swinging, going, hey guys, let's save the planet, you know, and very quickly got a kicking, and realised it was going to take a lot, you know, a lot of cajoling and charming and pressure and political persuasion to get people to care about it at work and do things about it. And I think I was quite taken aback by the challenges in construction to embracing sustainability. And I think a lot of the people who I was talking to in their personal lives did care, but couldn't see a path through their work to it being important and to actually being able to do anything about it within the structure of construction, the construction industry as it is. And what's been your experience of starting to roll out construction initiatives at work?
No, that's absolutely true, Georgia. Whatever you said, it's quite difficult to change mindsets of people who've been working like that for so many years now. So when you talk about sustainability to people in the construction industry, for them, it is going out of the ordinary to do something which they think is the right way to do it, or the right thing to do it, but they don't know how to do it. And most part of what I do is, well, I believe that we really need to have an agile mindset when it comes to the construction industry, because we've worked in a particular way, in a particular manner for so many centuries now, and we need to now move forward. And with that means we have to change the culture, basically. And to me, when it comes to changing the culture within the company, we've got quite a few initiatives to drive sustainability, which me and my team get heavily involved with. We come up with those initiatives as well to drive it. And the first part of any culture change, I think, for me, is creating awareness. And believe me that we've been working in the industry, I've been working in the industry for so many years. It's only in the last 2 years that this awareness has taken momentum. Sort of people knew the effects of climate change, but It's in the past 2 years where we talk about either David Attenborough or Greta Thunberg, people who've tried to bring that awareness to everybody. And now people have started to know, they knew about it, but they're now aware of the consequences. So it's that awareness which I'm still trying to promote within the company. And then the next step, what I see is then leading to a behavior change, which is where I say we need to have an agile mindset. So we, in the company where I work for, we are at that stage where we've made people aware. We're now having a behavior change to reach to a culture where we want sustainability, climate change agenda to be a part of what we deliver. So we've got a long way to go, but I think the idea that I'm trying to through creating awareness and the behavior change is letting people know that we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You understand what I mean? Because a lot of with the construction industry, the mindset has been different. So that's what we're trying to embed in our company culture. And I think the behavior change that I'm trying to push in comes with adopting the culture for innovation. So what we've done is identified a lot of different or done a bit of cross sector pollination in that sense, where we are trying to learn from different businesses, how the different businesses have applied different ideas and initiatives when it came to delivering sustainability. So there are various different sectors that we are trying to look into. The biggest one that we are now looking in is collaborating with universities. There is so much work already done in universities where we are looking at performance gap, carbon, materials, and so many other things. We are now collaborating with different universities and trying to work with them to understand the best way forward. So I was involved in the past 4 years on a project where we were working with UCL, Butler School of Architecture, looking at energy performance and the performance gap, bridging the performance gap. So I was supervising a PhD with UCL, being the industry supervisor, looking at how we can build buildings where we're not just talking about the design performance, but in actual performance. So when it comes to the energy, the environmental factors that we predict at design stage, how we achieve them later on. So there is this cross-sector pollination, or how I say it is partnerships that we need to build in with different sectors, not just the construction industry. How I see construction industry is very, very, we work in our silos. We don't want to talk about what we've done on a project with the other company or within the construction sector as well.
Yeah, there's a real fear, isn't there? I think in all companies, there's a traditional way of keep that information and that intelligence to ourselves because we don't want to give anybody else any competitive advantage. And I think that is completely the opposite of what we need to do for sustainable development, because we don't have time for everybody to make the same mistakes and kind of move at snail's pace, like with Letty and all of these organizations. We have to come together and help one another to get a leg up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So part of what I do is also I co-chair the Climate Change and Sustainability Forum at the Franco-British, the French Chamber of Commerce. So it's basically the Franco-British businesses coming together. However, the forum is open to anybody who wants to join in. The idea is that we get people from different sectors. It could be automobile industry, it could be waste, it could be blue chip companies, people who have got or have delivered something within their companies or within their sectors on achievable sustainability goals. We invite them to the forum and they discuss how they've done it, and we learn from each other. And I find that really useful. And that's something that we're doing with the Franco-British context. But I really would wish that there is something in the construction industry where we've got a representation within a wider sector. There's so much to learn from the automobile industry, for example, how quickly the diesel and petrol cars were transferred to being hybrid and now electric. But us in the construction industry, we are still thinking of steel and concrete and how to make them sustainable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
We need to learn from each other and apply the processes. And that's where I think the challenge lies.
It's a very traditional industry, isn't it? Very slow to change, very risk averse. And I think that, you know, I trained, I graduated over 20 years ago. I started as a sponsored undergraduate at university in construction, and I worked in the industry for a number of years, took time out to have kids and look after my kids at home, then came back into industry a few years ago. And I was so shocked at how little had changed. And that the stuff that we had been trialing as innovation on projects previously was still not standard practice in construction, you know, and I'm still seeing today people on projects talking about the stuff that we were doing 10 years ago as if now it's something new. And that really surprises me that it's such a conservative industry. And I think now is the time when people maybe, instead of thinking about it as, oh, we've got to do this, there's an opportunity to grab hearts and minds and to really make people feel passionate, like more purpose driven about this. I mean, Carol, how are you finding it in your industry? Do you think, are the guys there, guys and girls, are they talking about it as being a chore, or do you feel like they're interested and keen to pick this up because they're personally invested in it?
I would say, well, wherever you sit in the industry, it's different. If you're the young people that are coming up through the ranks at college, when I do talks, they are so engaged, and I think us having our students coming out of college walking the talk is going to be a crucial part of success in our industry. I do think there is, in our organisation at Tate, we talk about people having a fixed mindset and a change mindset. And the people in the fixed mindset have real difficulty in coping with any sort of change. And we try to help people in fixed mindsets get through the, oh my God, this is happening to me. This is a threat to me. I don't want it to happen. I'm in denial, and trying to get them to come out the other side and be committed. So we have we're very focused as an organisation on change engagement, but that's because we've spent a lot of time realizing through mergers and acquisitions that's what we need to do. I think the big problem that we have is in our industry is we're all in different little pockets, and it's this collaboration that we need to have is difficult, you know, and the holistic approach needs to be taken on board. And then the other issue that we have is even today, our industry is very much white, male dominated. And I think that this is a problem because I think diversity and inclusion and sustainability are one and the same thing, because you need to mix up all the ideas that come from all of the different people and all of the different walks of life to get a really good mix and a new way of thinking. And when everybody's in that white male mindset, it's quite hard to push through change. I think, so I think the more people from ethnic minorities and the more women that we can have and the more diverse we can be, the easier it will be to push things through.
I agree. I think the diversity of thought is so important when you're addressing these sorts of challenges, and embracing that diversity encourages people to think differently, doesn't it, in their organisation? And also I feel like when I'm speaking to a room of guys in construction, there's a sort of, if I'm the only person in the room who's different from them, then it becomes a them and us thing, you know, like because I don't look like them, because I don't speak like them, or, you know, they therefore are justified in thinking completely differently from me. And so it just becomes, oh, she's the one who's doing sustainability, she's not one of us, and therefore we're kind of can club together and, you know, ignore it. So the more people we have who've got different voices, different opinions, different points of view, different backgrounds, I think it's just a healthy thing all round, isn't it? So Kat, what have you found then with your colleagues? I'm going to start getting onto the solutions, right? So we've talked about all of our various different backgrounds and challenges. With all the groups that you have worked with, and all the various different viewpoints from engineers, architects, clients, and, you know, contractors and so on, how have you managed to find a sort of unifying point, because all of these people have different problems, don't they, that they're bringing to the table. How have you brought them together and got everybody moving in the same direction?
I mean, starting with Letty, for example, that stemmed from a very specific group of people who were working to respond to the new London plan and working to improve the proposed new London plan and in terms of carbon. So carbon is a bit of a unifying force in that sense with Letty and the group that I'm in. So it doesn't really matter what your background is, as long as you're looking to reduce carbon, and that then you're in, and it's great. And we need hands on deck, and it's all voluntary. So anyone's time is welcome time to contribute. So I guess like all of the organisations that I'm part of, there's a lack of time and resource. So there's a genuine need to bring people on board and bring them along with you on the journey to achieve the outcomes of what each group's trying to achieve. So there is this kind of need to be fluid in terms of who the audience is. I guess with Architects Declare, it's quite interesting in that the UK Architects Declare was the first of the construction industry declare movements, but it sparked in the UK and internationally sister initiatives, or a family of initiatives under the same umbrella known as Construction Declares now. And that has over 5,800 or 5,000 something companies globally who have similarly set up initiatives in their countries. And we've got, I think, over 23 countries now who have similarly set up construction declares, whether through Architects Declare or any of the other kind of building service engineers, civil service and civil engineers, etc., etc. So it's become a global movement, and what's been the unifying force with that one has been the declaration statement. And actually what's been really nice to see is that although there's a genuine kind of commonality, which is that we've all declared a climate and biodiversity emergency, we all have in our professions different ways of affecting change in that. So many of the professions who've set up their initiative, that's a sister initiative to Architects Declare, have slightly tweaked and altered the wording of our original declaration. And what's even more interesting to see is that globally then, countries have, even the architects initiatives in different countries have also tweaked the language to better suit their cultural or ethical climates that they have there. So for example, in Australia, they make a really big reference to the kind of Aboriginal communities and an acknowledgement of the kind of long history of treading lightly on land that stem from these communities that have, I suppose, been decimated as a result of colonisation and kind of the white British Empire. And so that's really interesting to see. And also in Canada as well, reference similarly to their communities there who were there before the white British people arrived. So that's been really interesting. So I think it's this kind of commonality to an extent, but then an acknowledgement that actually what an architect has the power to change might be slightly different from what a building service engineer might have the power to change, but we are all coming together around the same shared, bigger, higher level vision.
Yeah. And so how can people get involved in these organisations? So how does one become part of Construction Declares?
So Construction Declares, for example, all of the kind of members, if you like, or signatories, they are businesses. So that is business-led kind of initiative, where practices or companies declare a climate emergency and commit to enact change following the declaration points. Whereas ACAN and Letty are individual-based initiatives, where it's individual volunteers who might well work for companies who are very supportive of them, like mine is, for example, sharing resources, sharing my time with those initiatives. But that's down to individual agency rather than necessarily a company-based agency. And what's really interesting about that in the form of ACAN is because it is a kind of individualistic group, in a sense, it's the coming together of people, and we've likened it to like sharing notes in the back of the classroom, because we're sharing knowledge between our companies through WhatsApp groups and so on, and trying to share knowledge from a more bottom-up kind of direction than perhaps the Architects Declare, which is maybe, while there is some of that going on, it's also about representing companies, which is obviously then really desirable for government to hear because it's a representation of an industry. So I think they have different kind of agencies in their own right, these different groups. So sometimes it can be quite tricky shuffling my own hats to remember which one is which. But
remember not to be too personal at the one where you're representing the company. And yeah, I love that, that kind of autonomous movement. It's very similar to XR. So I'm an Extinction Rebellion activist, and Carol, I hope you don't mind me outing you. I can't remember if you mentioned it in your in your intro, but we met as a result of an Extinction Rebellion rally. And the way that works is that, you know, it's just on Facebook and people can join it. They can go along to local meetings, although obviously now that's all held online. But every individual group almost has their, although we have core beliefs and core actions that we pursue, every group is autonomous and so works in their own way, and there's this kind of commonality between us of passion and purpose. So is there, Nidhi, is there a major contractors declare group? Do you know?
There is what Kat was talking about. It's the same thing, but the way the construction industry has taken this is there are different sectors. So we've got infrastructure, we've got buildings. So there are some companies who've signed up for the UK Contractors Declare, or they've signed up for the climate emergency declared by the Institute of Structural Engineers or Institute of Civil Engineers. So there are different organizations such as this and such as these, and the big group that kind of unifies everything is the UK Green Building Council, which looks at various different parts of the construction sector. And I think they work, Letty, they work all in collaboration. And I think that's a very good thing that's happening overall in the construction industry, because the company I work for, we've got various different arms. So we've got an infrastructure arm, we've got the civil arm that works on building bridges and things like that. We've got the construction arm where I'm a part of, and we've also got the developer arm and the facilities management arm. So there are various different initiatives that are around, but it's very obvious that every construction company or every industry is now trying to sign up to that challenge, to reach to that zero emissions, to reach to that climate emergency KPIs that they've set within the company, or looking at it globally. I think within where I work, we've tried to implement that through, like I said, through culture of innovation. Now, what we've got within the company is that everybody has to have one objective in their annual appraisal, which is linked with implementing innovation in whatever they do. So it could be somebody working in the legal department for the construction company, but they would have that in their appraisal. And with that, what we've seen is there are so many ideas that are coming forward, and a lot of it linked with sustainability, whether it's efficiency on site, whether it's looking at different materials, whether it's unlocking some opportunities with manufacturers or suppliers or subcontractors, or even on site, how we do things better than before. So that culture of innovation is somehow getting into the momentum of delivering the objectives of sustainability in the climate change agenda, which I find it is working really well. And I think most, or us as an industry, it's not just the construction industry, but overall, if we have to mitigate the effects of climate change, we need to go beyond what we are doing business as usual, and the innovation and R&D side of things need to be adopted as the first thing to go forward in that. And I think I've seen the trailer of the movie. I'm so sorry I couldn't watch the movie, but that's what the movie also suggested, where there are ideas around, there's innovation that is needed to push the agenda for climate sustainability and climate change.
It's been unfortunate that construction hasn't really invested in innovation. You know, we are still building in the same way that we built pyramids, and new methods of construction are so difficult to get off the ground and to really get moving, and all of this risk aversion. So, you know, and we are in a climate and biodiversity emergency. So the thing now is to try and galvanize people into saying it's not just about polishing around the edges of building, as you know, as business as usual. It's about a fundamental question about how we earn our money and whether or not that is sustainable. So, I mean, Carol, starting out on this journey now for you, can you give us an example of the sorts of initiatives that you've got going on that you feel are scalable? Like we saw in the film, things that are quite simple that exist right now that you feel have the potential to make a real difference for your industry.
So one of the things that we want to drive is the concept that waste is a design flaw. So we want to really become ingrained in the whole concept that when we start building something, that we are immediately thinking about what we do with it at the end of its life. So typically we would build a stage set out of rental assets, so things that are like we can use again and again and again. And then we would have a custom built piece that would make it different from the thing that everybody else had. But we never thought, what were we going to do with this custom built piece at the end? So now we're really trying to get to the thing of like, so when we start designing it, how are we going to take it apart and how are we going to use all those nutrients again? How are we going to get the alumina out? How are we going to get the wood out? How are we going to eliminate plastic from we're trying to get a new way of thinking, or do we design everything so that it can become a rental asset at the end of its life so it can be used again and again? And we're trying to talk to our manufacturers that make our lighting equipment, our sound equipment and our video equipment, for them to start thinking as well about what the end of life is going to be for the product that they're building for us. And we sponsor students to do their final years at the Association of Architects, and so sometimes we sit on the panel to adjudicate their final pieces of work. And one year there was this group who had come up and they had this amazing thing where they had these drones just came out the back of a container, and these drones could like they produced like thin like pieces of plastic that they could weave into shapes, and they could make buildings with it. And then the concept was at the end they would melt the building down and then they could rebuild it into something else. So I think like if we are doing it in entertainment, and I appreciate that entertainment is small in comparison with architecture and construction, I think that it would be good when we are thinking about a building, how do we, when we demolish that building, like they've just demolished a hotel across the road from us, and it broke my heart because that was however many toilets, however many sinks, however many baths, all went to landfill, all of the windows, everything, just all of it went to landfill. Why do we not think when we demolish this building, how do we use everything again? Yeah. I think that that's a really fundamental way we all need to change our thinking about everything. The clothes we wear, the cars we have, everything.
I absolutely agree.
So waste as a design flaw is our major push in our organisation.
Yeah, I agree that I think it's what you've talked about is exactly the same in design, in architecture and construction, this idea of circularity and not just designing for a certain aesthetic, but really thinking about its lifetime performance, thinking about its end of life at concept stage. You know, how is this going to be dismantled, repurposed, reused again and again? And that simply hasn't been part of the cost model of our original design and construction. It's all been about, let's deliver this now on time to this particular specification. And designers and contractors rarely go back to a building even a year or two after its construction to see how it's performing. And so that just tends to be the problem of the people that occupy it, you know, later on down the line. So that's been for me, a really welcome change in the conversation about the longevity of the asset and how is it performing, and how can we take those lessons back into what we're doing to make sure that we're evolving as we design and build things. So going back to you, Nidhi, what do you think within your work is something really positive and scalable that you can see right now exists and you want to see grow?
Well, one example you've already just now said about how the performance gap and, you know, going back to check if the buildings that we've built are performing the way they are, if there are any, if the tenants or the people who've moved in have decided to remove the carpet or have decided to remove the flooring and install something of their own because we never consulted them in the past. to check before we designed it for them. Or if it is, when it comes to people who are using the building, are they really comfortable? Is it because of the changing climate? We've got hotter summers, colder winters, or the other way around. It is whether the flats or the houses are getting overheated because we tried to make it zero carbon and then looked at really, really efficient fabric where there is no air leakage. And in the summers, we are now facing the problem of overheating. So it's going back and checking those items and then learning it from those experiences of the users and informing our design. And I think we've started doing it on our projects. And I know there are lots of different contractors and architects who've started doing this as well, going back and checking the post-occupancy, doing a post-occupancy evaluation on projects. It'd be really good if the construction industry overall, when it comes to designers, consultants, subcontractors, contractors, if they share this knowledge with the industry, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. There are some things that will always go well for a project, and there are some things that will not. It cannot be 100% success. But if we are learning from it and then we are evolving with our designs, with our way of construction and everything, I think it's a big learning, and it's an easy win as well, because we are doing it, we're just not sharing it.
I absolutely agree. I think there is a new humility that I always talk to my clients about and encourage. And I love in the new green economy, this feeling of nobody is perfect. And it feels like to me, the old approach was to release a brochure or a website that said, we're perfect. Just don't look over there at all of that horrible stuff we're doing. Just look at this, token project. And everyone was trying to portray themselves as being perfectly green, perfectly sustainable. But to me, I love the humility of saying, right, we've looked at it all, warts and all. We've looked at everything we do. We understand it. We've got to grips with the problem. This stuff is really difficult and we don't quite know yet how we're going to deal with that. But this stuff we're working on right now, and we've got a solution for it. But in the meantime, all that really difficult stuff, we're being honest about it. We're sharing that information with other industries that are struggling, with other contractors or other practices that are also struggling. Together, we're going to try and find the solution that we're all struggling with. And that to me is the only way that sustainable development can really happen, is when we all get honest about the real reasons why this stuff hasn't happened quickly enough and come together to solve those problems, which is probably quite a nice segue, Kat, into what you're doing, which I think is exactly that, isn't it? And I'd also like to ask you, just to double the question, carbon is a really easy thing to talk about because it fits quite nicely into that engineering mindset of going, okay, I get that. That's a kilogram of carbon. It fits nicely into a spreadsheet and I can make it all work with numbers. How do you feel the conversation is going with biodiversity, ecology, social value, and all of those slightly more squeamish things for designers sometimes?
Yeah, so firstly, I totally agree that we can't shy away from talking about difficult things. And I think it's very easy at the moment to point fingers at bad practice or what's deemed to be bad practice and kind of create kind of enemies or nemesis in the construction industry. And I actually think it's really important that we work together to understand why, for example, airports are still being built and why people still drive cars and why not everyone can walk to work or cycle to work and so on. And I think there's bigger systematic things that we as architects alone can't tackle, and but we can ask questions about them, and we can talk to others about what we think solutions might be. So that's kind of my first thought on what you're saying, which is that there's only so much that you can resolve within a single building, and actually cities and the built environment as a whole need to work better, and that's much bigger than the role of a single architect normally on a normal project. So that's the first note. The second aspect that you said about in terms of carbon being easy and so on, I think that's really important. I think that is why, since being part of the Letty Embodied Carbon Primer last year, I've transitioned into being more involved in the circular economy aspects, and also through ACAN and my group Where the Wild Things Aren't, trying to look at broader issues of ecology and natural systems. And it is really tricky. There are tools out there that you can use for more kind of circular economy aspects, or for broader environmental impacts, but it gets really messy. You know, the supply chains we're talking about cross international borders, where maybe auditing of supply chains is less thorough, and it's really tricky to actually know where the materials that you're specifying ultimately might come from. At the point that you're designing your building, you have no idea where that steel might come from normally, and you have no idea where that cement in that concrete is going to come from, and you don't really know what impacts your design is having on the planet. All that I know is that sand is running out, and gravel and sand is a depleting resource on this planet, and we're using too much of it, and the issue gets really big and messy again. So I think it can be off-putting to people when you say all construction is bad, but ultimately all construction is bad. So what we need to be doing is an awful lot of construction, less construction. And I think my kind of solution would be that we really need to urgently roll out a mass retrofit in the UK, and we need to try and make use of our existing building stock a lot better prior to building new buildings, and we need to be avoiding demolition in the first place, and doing a mass retrofit. So that's kind of my thing, and for that to happen we do need legislation change. For example, VAT at the moment disincentivizes people from doing retrofit because you pay 20% VAT as opposed to like none at all on new build. So we really need to make change, and that's something that Architects Declare, ACAN, loads of groups are unified on a change being needed. And I hope that we'll see a change in that in the next few years, with a kind of green recovery mindset in the government. So I really hope that that's something that we will see a short-term win on. But ultimately, I think we need to be a lot less wasteful in how we build. And we need to, like you said earlier, Carol, think about the circular economy as we're designing. And that's what I'm working on with Letty, some guidance for at the moment, for how to design in a circular way, and what kind of easy wins there are kind of in early stage work, but also over a lifetime of a building, how we can gradually improve the circularity of the building. So that's all stuff that I'm really interested in. So I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said.
I think we could have a whole hour conversation on what you've just said there. I think with 2 minutes left of the event saying all construction is bad, we need to completely retrofit everything. That is an event just on its own. So I think, thank you for that, Kat, because I think NAWIC ought to have an event about that, about new construction, retrofit, the future of the construction industry. Because that is, we can't mess around the edges of this, can we? We have to get serious about this. What are we doing as an industry? What is the future of our industry, and how can we get fit for it? How can we get ready for it? And how can we scale up these solutions and really get people prepared to make those changes? Because that's a big change to a lot of people, to think about that and think that way. So we have run out of time, and we've got a great question from Sam about white men in industry. How can they be better allies to help encourage diversity? Somebody want to answer that with like 10 seconds? Who's got an answer for that? How can white men be better supporters?
I think if you can involve, if you can have like men listen to what women have to say collectively about the industry that they're working in, and just be open to listening to how difficult it is for women or ethnic minorities to work in a white male dominated environment, that's a good win. Just let them listen.
I agree. Listen, and also amplify.
Because often they're not doing things badly because they want to. It's just they don't know any other way.
We're all working within a system that we find ourselves in, but we can all be advocates to break that too. And so I think listening, but also amplifying. So if somebody in the room is not being listened to, amplify them, you know, say such and such has got a point, you know, and allow them to come forwards where maybe it might be difficult for them not to. And there you go. Thank you so much. I want to carry on talking to you all night. I think this is such an interesting topic, and I really want to talk about solutions. I think we should hold another event to, you know, further unpick some of the things that we've talked about. Thank you so much, Carol, Nidhi and Kat. Where can people contact you after this event if they want to talk further? Carol.
On LinkedIn, just find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, so Carol Scott at Take Towers on LinkedIn, and Nidhi?
LinkedIn will be a good way to contact me as well. Yeah.
Great, okay, and Kat?
Sure.
The same again, LinkedIn, all of us LinkedIn. So thank you everybody who's attended. Thank you so much for your time. This is going to be, this is recorded and it's going to be on YouTube on the NAWIC channel. So please do share, spread the word about NAWIC, and we'd love to see you at future events. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.